by itself. Now it's going to go sideways with people.
Well, you just put that around your neck, and whatever you're working with, though, you have to mark. If you have to mark, go ahead and write. Drop it.
Just think of the lovely people I get to meet from all different countries, and the lovely faces. That's better than sitting home looking at four walls and maybe end up in a nursing home somewhere.
Lives full of surprise all around us, right before our eyes. Hello, I'm Tom MacArthur. Instead of the usual news of the day, this is our chance to focus on the good news and on the people who make our corner of the world special. We've seen just a few of the people we are going to meet over the next half hour in this holiday special of Neighbors. We began our weekly Neighbor series on KREM-2 News this past spring. Tonight, we are going to take a look back at some of those special people and see what a few of them are doing now. For our first story, if you live away from the city water system, chances are you get your water from a well. But where to drill and how deep are important questions, especially when drilling can cost you up to $20 a foot. To answer those questions, you might want to call one of our Spokane neighbors. John Nicholson is a dowser. Some people call him a water witch. Both titles mean the same thing. He can find water underground with the twitch of a willow. John says he first learned about dowsing when he was 11 years old. One day, he says, he saw an old man walking around with a stick.
He was out there, this is during Prohibition time, and he was quite a fellow to use a little bit of moonshine, and I said, what are you doing with that stick? I said, I'm looking for water. I said, you must have had a little too much.
John's skepticism soon turned to respect when he tried dowsing himself and learned he could do it too. John says he doesn't know how it works or why, just that it works. Finding where to start drilling, though, is only half the job. Equally important is determining how far down to drill and how much water will come back once you do. This, John says, takes patience, concentration, and a comfortable chair. So that's where the water is.
Yeah. I could follow.
The vertical bobbing of the willow stick, John says, tells him how far down the water is hiding.
It stopped by itself. Now it's going to go sideways with people.
The horizontal bobbing tells him how many gallons of water per minute this well will produce. According to John's willow, the well drilled here will find 86 gallons per minute at 105 feet down. Believe it or not.
Keep on moving, Dan, don't you listen to him, Dan. He's a devil, not a man, and he spreads the burning sand with water.
90% of your well drillers don't believe in it. And that's true, Tom. They don't. They absolutely do not believe in it. I've been, well, let's say lucky maybe.
John claims to be 85 to 90% accurate on the wells that he dowses. The well that he dowsed back in June for us here never was drilled. The owner of the property is waiting instead for a water main to be installed. The question still remains, does water dowsing work? I guess we'll still just have to either believe it or not. We have a lot more to show you in this special edition of Neighbors. Up next, we'll meet a man who goes by more than a few pen names. We'll meet him when we come back. How many of these do you have laying around at home? A couple dozen perhaps, a few in a drawer, one by the phone, and another behind the couch. What would you do if you had several thousand of these? Start a collection perhaps? That's exactly what one of our Spokane neighbors decided to do almost 50 years ago.
Some of them still work, yeah. But I don't care if they work or not. I just want the pens. Or Eversharps or pencils.
Clarence Upsall is a collector. He's been one since 1940. He collects pens, pencils, and Eversharps. That's what they used to call mechanical pencils. Clarence says his collection totals more than 4,000 writing instruments. That's enough to use one every day for the next 10 years without using the same one twice. While the collection is indeed large, it started out small and grew one pen at a time.
Well, go traveling, and we used to travel a lot to Minneapolis and Detroit and Chicago, pick up cars. And, of course, you stopped someplace and you had to sign for something. I'd always forget and put the pen in my pocket.
Clarence worked most of his life for a Packard automobile dealer in North Dakota. As a result, most of his pens are from the Midwest. Of all the pens Clarence has in his collection, this is probably my favorite. It's from Texaco Tom in Williston, North Dakota. The message on the pen, always on the level. And if you look real close, the pen does indeed have a level. That's the thing about old pens. They were designed to do more than just write.
Here's one that was made in occupied Germany. It's in Eversharp, and it's also a 12-inch ruler.
If you don't need to be on the straight nor on the level, you could probably use this pencil.
Well, you just put that around your neck, and whatever you're working with, all you have to mark. If you have to mark, go ahead and write. Drop it.
Clarence indeed has a pen for every occasion. One with a flashlight to write at night, one with a pickle to sign a check at a restaurant, another with a sample of motor oil, and another still with a small car to put the oil in. Even after a pen has run out of ink, it is still a collector's item to Clarence. So before you throw another pen away, keep this in mind.
Oh, no. Don't throw them out. Just send them to me.
And send pens they did. Since that story aired back in May, Clarence says he has been given more than 240 additional pens. A few of these are duplicates, but most of them, Clarence says, are new to his collection. A collection that now numbers in excess of 4,600 pens. After tonight, I'm sure that will grow by a few more. It is not uncommon to change from one career to another. In fact, most people change several times in their lives. But when someone changes from one end of the job spectrum to the other, it can make for a very interesting story. We meet next a Colville man who is now a man of the cloth, but who once wore cloth of a different color.
For my first year, I was primarily working day shift, and during the Expo period, I worked part-time foot beat at Expo and part-time foot beat downtown on what was called the larceny squad. And that's where I rode the Vespa.
Keith Axberg graduated with the Spokane Police Academy class of 1974. He had always toyed with the idea of entering the ministry ever since he became a Christian in high school, but decided instead to follow his star through the police academy. After studying police science in college and 4 years of police work, though, Keith decided to dedicate his life to his Lord.
Well, I was in law enforcement and really enjoyed it. I felt, nevertheless, a call to the ordained ministry was my primary call and vocation that God was calling me to. And so in about 78, I was in a position financially and emotionally to make the change.
This past Saturday, Keith saw a 17-year goal become a reality when he was ordained a priest in the Episcopal Church. On the surface, it may seem like quite a difference between the uniform Keith used to wear and this one. To Keith, though, police work and church work aren't far apart at all.
For me, as a Christian, I felt that it was a godly profession, and, well, it still is a godly profession. It's a little bit different from the ordained ministry in some respects, but in other respects, it's very, very similar.
While Keith is now an official of the church, he says the real spokesmen are the people who look back at him on Sunday morning.
The real ministry of the church is at the grassroots level. because every baptized Christian actually takes greater vows than what I'll be taking as a priest.
Today, Keith serves as a priest here at St. John's Church in Colville. Life as a priest, Keith says, is not all that different from when he served the church as a vicar.
Being ordained as a priest and able to do the job a little more fully in terms of our worship life and sacramental life, it does feel different in that sense. A little more like being an eagle with two wings instead of one.
Not only is Keith kept busy these days with his congregation in Colville, but he is also the reverend at another church in Republic. Keith makes the hour-long commute twice every Sunday, serving God's people. It was almost 3,000 years ago that the Phoenicians made the first bar of soap out of rendered goat fat. With today's technology, you might think our soap is a far cry from what the Phoenicians washed their hands with. True, we add coloring agents and perfume these days, but the basic recipe remains the same. What is the basic recipe, you ask? One of our Spokane neighbors can explain it best.
When we first started, we raised our own hogs, and the packing houses would render it for you, and we didn't even have to render it. But they don't do that anymore.
Soap has the same basic ingredients today that it did when it was first made thousands of years ago. Water, lye, and grease. Joycelyn Maines and her neighbor Darlene Barnes get their soap the way most people used to. They make it themselves.
Just for fun, I guess. We wanted to get our 2-year supply of soap, and it was expensive, and so we thought best way to get it is we'll make it, so we did.
It's part of the Mormon religion to have a 2-year supply of household goods on hand in case they should be needed in times of emergency or hardship. This batch of soap will be made with a total investment of $1.46, the cost of a can of lye.
Okay, all this is 5 cups of cold water with 1 can of lye in it, the whole can, 1 full can.
Once the water and lye have been mixed together, the only missing ingredient is pure
solid fat.
Joycelyn says she gets her fat for free from the local butcher shop. Once the rendered fat is melted, it's added to the water and lye mixture. The two coagulate to make soap.
In the days of when they used to do it, I had different equipment than we've got. They didn't have an electric roaster to melt the fat in. We just discovered that after we did it the hard way once on the stove. We tried to do it, and it's a lot of work. You have a nice stove fire when you spill it and those kind of things, but that electric roaster really took a lot of work out of rendering the fat out. Go for it. Here we go.
Once the soap batter has been made, it's poured into pans just like cake dough, except you probably wouldn't want to lick the bowl after a recipe like this. This batch is pure, but scents and coloring agents can be added to make it look just like the soap you'd buy in the store.
Well, I guess making something from what everybody else throws away in waste you've used, I guess it kind of makes you feel good to think you've been able to make something out of what everybody else throws away or classifies as garbage.
You'll probably never look at a bar of soap the same way again. Quite a few people in our community are good neighbors. Maggie here is going to help me explain how you can be a good neighbor too later on in this program. Still to come in our holiday special of Neighbors, we'll meet a man who makes toys the old-fashioned way, one at a time, with love. We'll be right back.
It says in the book that you give and you shall receive, and I believe it. And I've decided that that's why I'm still here, is because that's what they want me to do, is to make toys for the kids.
Spokane's Riverfront Park is more than just a patch of land. It is a collection of people. And if Riverfront Park is the gem of Spokane, then the woman we are about to meet is the sparkle of that gem. She is one of the many friends of Riverfront Park, but she does something no one else does quite like she does.
I patrolled this whole 100 acres, and I'm trying to make it safe for everyone here.
Her name is Nellie Sheneman, though she's called by several other names, among them Mother, Mom, and Grandma. She is Riverfront Park's official hostess. Her name tag says so. She works sometimes 10 to 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, all without pay.
As far as money concerned, no. But I'm paid 10 times fold. Just think of the lovely people I get to meet from all different countries and the lovely faces. That's better than sitting home looking at four walls and maybe end up in a nursing home somewhere.
Nellie says a bus accident as a child has kept her in a wheelchair most of her life. But it is the wheelchair that gives Nellie mobility the rest of us don't have. Imagine having to walk the number of miles Nellie rides in a day. She's not handicapped, she says, just unhandy.
How you doing, honey? Oh, I'm doing fine.
Nellie says she used to work in the security business, so in a way this is something she has trained all her life for. She has a relationship with her work that few people can claim. To Nellie, her job is her joy.
I'm not a rich woman. I have to live on a very low income. But I get more enjoyment out of here. This doesn't cost me anything. Just think what this would cost if I'd go, say, to a show or many other things. I've got it all here.
Nellie says she can be called on to do anything at any time. Like the time last week when one of the vendors in the park lost his day's proceeds to the wind. Nellie was there to gather the money back.
I wish you could have seen his face. He went from pale to a nice pink. And what thrilled me more than ever, when he did, we get back up here and they found out it was every bit was found. That he says, thank God we have Nellie.
Yes, indeed. Nellie is by no means just a fair weather volunteer. Now that the park is covered with snow, Nellie volunteers her time here at the Spokane Rehabilitation Center, teaching ceramics or helping out in the horticulture lab. Nellie keeps doing what she does so well.
I come here to enjoy these people, and these people means a lot to me. They've been with me for many, many times. Some of these people, I adopt them as my kids, children. Think an awful lot of every one of them. Look forward to see each other. It's better than sitting home and feeling sorry for yourself and thinking about your problems. Then you haven't got any problems. You come down here and work with somebody else, because you can always find somebody a lot worse off than you are.
Thank you, Nellie, for being you. Nellie is one of the many people in the Inland Empire who work to make our corner of the world a special place. Our next neighbor is a man who makes toys the old-fashioned way, one at a time, with love. As you'll see, Christmas this year was a lot happier for a number of kids in local hospitals because of his efforts.
Oh, I've always enjoyed working with wood. I've made all kinds of things, and I don't know. That's a place to let yourself go. And there's so many things you can do with wood.
Stan Sweeting has been making wooden toys for almost 40 years. A construction supervisor by trade, now retired, Stan has had a piece of wood in his hands for most of his life.
Well, I used to do this for my own kids, and then started making a few for the neighborhood kids, and then I found out there was a lot of real needy kids, so I started giving them to them, and now it's got to be out of hand.
Some of Stan's creations are sold, but most are given away. Over the past several years, Stan has given thousands of toys to area service clubs, hospitals, and needy children. What he receives in return, Stan says, is something that could never be written on a price tag.
I can't explain it to you, but I'll tell you one thing. It's the most fun I've ever had, and most enjoyable thing, especially when you give them to the kids at Christmas. Most of them think Santa Claus brought them. I've got a few kids around here that think I'm Santa Claus.
The shelves of Stan's workshop are filled with toys yet to be given away. The walls are covered with letters from kids who have already received. Thank you, says one. We love you, says another.
It says in the book that you give and you shall receive, and I believe it. And I've decided that that's why I'm still here, is because that's what they want me to do, is to make toys for the kids. October gets here, well, I've got it. But it's a lot of fun. Once you get hooked on it, you can't help yourself.
The toys we saw Stan making this spring are now in the hands of children all over the Inland Empire. Many of the toys were brought to the kids at local hospitals to help make their Christmas a little better. If you've got any extra wood or paint, you could help make Stan's Christmas a little better too, so he can make some more toys for next year. Up next, a woman who is giving Spokane her gift of song in more ways than one. We'll meet her on the other side of this break.
It sort of just dawned on me when I was there that there were other children, even if I didn't know them, that maybe I could just come up and sing. So I called. I said, "Oh, yes, please."
We're pretty lucky in the Inland Northwest to have a lot of special people. That was the main reason we started our weekly Neighbor series back in May. Our last stop tonight brings us the story of another special neighbor, a woman who gives sick children the most precious gift of all, herself. A stay in the hospital is never a nice time, especially for a child. A world of toys and teddy bears replaced by a world of needles and tubes would scare anyone. We meet now a woman who is helping to make that hospital environment just a little more comfortable by adding her gift of song. That woman is another of our special Spokane neighbors.
Oh, how he loves you and me. A gal that I know that I worked with, her little boy had cancer, and he wasn't doing real well, and I heard about it, and like a lot of people, I thought, I wish there was something that I could do, and then it dawned on me that maybe I could go up and just sing to him.
Beth O'Neill Long first sang at Deaconess Hospital back in January. It wasn't but a short time after that she was asked to sing at her little friend's memorial service.
It sort of just dawned on me when I was there that there were other children, even if I didn't know them, that maybe I could just come up and sing. So I called, said, "Oh, yes, please." So I've been coming up on Mondays.
Beth visits the pediatric floor at Deaconess every week now to spread her warmth and happiness on the children who still come to be treated here. Occasionally, she will travel back to intensive care or into private rooms, wherever there are a pair of ears in need of some cheering up.
2, 3, I want to hear lots of noise on this one. You are my sunshine. Each one is, of course, has his or her own amount of time that they spend up here, and whether or not they're just in for tonsils, or they could be in because it's the last part of their life. And so they each have their own needs, but every child has a need to play and to feel like they're just having fun. And so that's hopefully what I'm doing.
Illness was something Beth only saw others suffer from until she discovered she had cancer herself this summer. The cancer kept her from singing for a couple of months. Now she says the cancer is gone and her voice is back. Her love of sharing that voice with others never left.
I think that's pretty good for today. I think it has really opened my eyes to not being as selfish as I was, and being thankful for what I have and for the health of my child and some of the people, you know, that I know, and it's gotten me out of myself a little bit.
Just a few days ago, Old National and First National Banks got together to donate $50,000 to Spokane's Ronald McDonald House. The house will be a place where families can spend time with their children who are being treated at local hospitals. $5,000 of this check will go to help Beth record an album. Beth, in turn, will donate all the proceeds from her album back into the Ronald McDonald House. The album should be out this spring. We'll get to hear one of Beth's original songs in just a moment. But first, we introduced you earlier to Maggie here. She and many of her friends wouldn't have had any Christmas this year if it weren't for people like you. Maggie's owner adopted her from Spokane's Humane Society this year. Both the Humane Society and Spokanimal Care have many more of Maggie's friends just waiting for a good neighbor like you to give them a home. This half hour has gone all too quickly. It's time for Maggie and me to say goodbye. We leave you tonight with a look back at some of the other neighbors we visited this past year, along with a special song composed and sung by Beth O'Neill Long about neighbors. All of us at KREM-2 wish you the happiest of holidays and thank you for being with us. Good night.
You don't have to look very far to see the interesting people there are. And chances are they're people who are much the same as me and you. People who take the time to care. People with something to share. Lives full of surprise are all around you, right before your eyes. And chances are they're people who live beside both me and you. Neighbors who take the time to care. Neighbors with something to share. They are people both young and old, and they each have their own stories to be told. And chances are they're people who have touched the hearts of me and you. Neighbors who take the time to care. Neighbors with something to share.